Hello, everybody. Oh, I'll turn the TV off in the back. That's pretty annoying. 16 people. I think I lose like 5 people each time I do one of these. 15 people. That's okay. That's 15 more people than I am. So that's a pretty good ratio. Anyway, how is everybody? I have an update for you on BMYRT. And I will then also talk a little bit about Groupon and about Dell, which is coming up after the market closes. Let's start with BMYRT. So there was an article yesterday, a CTFN article, that had a bunch of interesting tidbits in it. And I don't subscribe to CTFN, but a friend of mine told me the salient parts. So here we go. CTFN says that lawyers have been selected and they have the law firm already signed up. And the estimated fees will be about $50 million, which seems incredibly high to me, considering the Sanofi CVR was a $14 million proposition, and that took 4 years to resolve. So I don't know if that 50 million includes the contingent fees that will come, that will come upon a success, or if that 50 million is all cash expected over the next 4 years. Regardless, that 50 million, if you just do the math, works out to about 7 to 8 cents per CVR. And the article says that everyone will be able to participate pro rata, and that in the next 2 or 3 weeks, we should be hearing about ways for that to happen and ways to participate. I still have not ever spoken to the trustee. He has not responded to a single one of my emails. I'm optimistic that I will be able to participate pro rata. And like I promised you guys before, as soon as I hear anything about how you do that or the mechanism to do that, I'll do a YouTube immediately to let everybody know the procedure. The final thing it says in there about the funding is it says that, and this is expected, of course, that they're debating whether to compensate the people that are going to be funding the lawsuit. Of course, they're going to be compensated. If people don't pro rata their share, then people are going to oversubscribe. And as of now, the only people that can oversubscribe are the people that are in the steering committee, which is, I guess, the 5 largest shareholders. And that doesn't steal from you. You know, it's unfortunate that we can't oversubscribe, but as long as you can do your pro rata, then you don't have to worry about having a big chunk taken out of your proceeds. So you're going to want to pay for your funding when it comes down to it. So that's that. The other parts were just as interesting. It says that the heart of the lawsuit is going to be focused on the major amendment and botched responses, everything that we expected. COVID wasn't specifically mentioned in the article, but I'm sure that'll be part of it as well. It said that IDESL New Jersey inspection has happened and it went well, but they do not know if the blue vector has been inspected yet. So that makes me think that IDESL is going to get approved by the PDUFA date. And I emailed Blue IR yesterday and asked them if the inspection had happened. And they said they will not comment on inspections, but they stand by their PDUFA date. So obviously that was before the article came out. So obviously Blue knows the inspection happened. And there's no reason for this not to get approved on time if the inspection happened, especially because now we're in the 3rd week of February and the PDUFA is still a full month away. So we're not talking about what happened with the vector in Texas with Lanza, where it was, the middle of December when they finished the inspection versus the approval of the 1st week of February. And then the most depressing part of the article, it said that Bristol Myers expected Lysocell to be approved by the end of the year. They thought that they would return the 483 and that would be enough for approval. And they didn't expect the FDA to push back on the 483 response. They call it a headache for them and bad for morale. And I find that, pretty interesting that that was the words that the source used. I don't know whether it's just how I wake up in the morning sometimes and I feel better about this than other days, but I increasingly feel very good about our chances here. I would say that I did say back in December that I thought there was 50 to 75 cents litigation value in the downside outcome. And I ended up being almost exactly right. The market right now is in the secondary market is bid 55 cents, and there's some, I think, offered at 75 cents, but nothing is traded since LisoCell has been approved. But there's a very strong bid at 50 or 55 cents. You could sell all of your stock if you could figure out a way to do it through a broker at 50 to 55 cents. So my downside was correct. And I think we'll end up ultimately getting a lot more than 50 cents. So this is the way I look at it, okay? I thought about this yesterday. This is my analogy I came up with. Let's say you hire a builder to build you 3 homes. And you're going to tell the builder you have to get all these 3 homes done by 12/31. And if you build all 3 homes by 12/31, I'm going to pay you to build the home. I'm going to pay you for all 3 homes. If you miss even 1 home by 12/31, you're going to get nothing. Okay? And let's say the builder agrees to this contract. Now let's say that the builder is responsible for doing everything, except I'm responsible for submitting the plans to the city to get approval to start building this property. Okay? Guess what? I screwed up. The city rejected my plans, and there was a 3-month delay before they could even start building the house. And I didn't push back the 12/31 deadline. Okay, well, I guess you could argue that the builder was silly for, allowing me to be in control of the process of submitting the plans, and maybe the builder should have put something in the contract about what happens if the plans don't get submitted on time or there's a delay, and he didn't do it. That's bad on him. But then let me tell you what else happens. The builder can't get lumber because COVID shut down the major shipping centers for 2 months from China, and they legit could not build the house. There was no physical way for them to build the house because there was no lumber available due to this pandemic. So I finished the house. I finished 2 of the houses by 12/31. The 3rd house I finished 35 days later. You're trying to tell me, and then New York law, by the way, New York law, which still hasn't been fleshed out yet with COVID, says that you do not need a force majeure clause for COVID excuses in contracts. If it's quote impossible to complete the contract due to COVID, then you are out of your contract. It's an impossibility clause. And it actually helps you that you don't have a force majeure. This was an article that I've talked about a lot on here. So you're telling me that if this went in front of a judge and the judge asked me, the person that signed the contract, what the intent of my contract with this builder was, which is to get all 3 homes done by 12/31. And if the builder fulfilled his obligations in the intent, and the only reason why he missed it by 35 days was because I screwed up the plans with the city, and also because they couldn't get lumber based on a once in 100-year, flood, which again, there's no force majeure clause, but that doesn't necessarily matter. The builder is going to be told by this judge that instead of getting $10 million for 2 homes being done on time and 1 home 35 days late, he's going to get 0. I don't think it's remotely possible that that's going to be the outcome. My guess is the judge, at the worst case, would take off 10 or 20 cents from the $9, saying that, at the worst case, the judge will give us 6 out of the $9 and say the other 3 were done, the other 2 were done completely on time. The whole purpose of this CVR with the 3 all or none is ridiculous. And all 3 drugs were approved and all the clinical data was fine. The purpose, the intent of the CVR was to protect against the ozanimod RTF and then to protect against the clinical data of ide-cel and LisoCell to get confirmed on their first cycle. But I think on the best case scenario, the judge will say, look, you couldn't sell LisoCell for 35 days past the deadline. What did that cost them? It probably cost Bristol Myers like $1 million, right? Nothing. 1 cent to CVR or something, because the delay in the DCF for 35 days is negligible. So if Bristol Myers takes this to court and there's actually a judge verdict, it's very likely, I think, that we could be awarded $8.50, $8.80, $8 plus interest. But this might take 4 or 5 years. So I don't see how Bristol Myers looms with that kind of liability for so many years. Because if there's interest added, it could be as much as 8% annual. And if at a $6 billion or $6.5 billion award, if this happens 4 or 5 years from now, you're talking, a $10 billion payout. It's a lot of money, and also just a terrible overhang for them. So the more I think about this, and the more confident we are that ide-cel is going to be approved on time, and LisoCell was just approved 35 days late, I do think there'll be a settlement. I just don't think the settlement will happen anytime soon, because I think, and I think they're right. I think the major holders of the CVR, and I've not talked to any of them, wouldn't even take $2 or $2.50 today if they were offered it. I think they believe they're owed $9, and I used to think that was silly, but it's true. The builder would not take $5 million for the $10 million he was supposed to get for the 3 homes because he was 35 days late finishing the 3rd home, and it was mostly the fault of me for not submitting the plans to the city correctly. And that builder definitely wouldn't take $1 million. So make no mistake about it. Just because CVR holders haven't built a home, our capital was committed for this vehicle, and it's exactly the same thing as lost money. We've lost the money that was ours. So that was we did our part, which is put up the capital, and it was their part to get it completed, and then they failed at it. So yeah, that's how I feel about the CVR. I could take some questions about the CVR before I talk about Groupon and about Dell. Let's see, only 2 people. 30 people on now. Hi, guys. Are the fees correlated to the size of the potential payout? So the way it should work, Christopher, no, the hourly fees should not, right? The lawyers are going to be paid in two buckets. They're going to get hourly fees, and then they're going to get a contingent payout based on the ultimate settlement or payout. And there'll be some sort of sliding scale to where, they're not going to make $1 billion. This is not like a typical class action lawsuit where, they get 1/3 of everything and then we get the rest. This is way too big amount of money. And that's the reason why we're paying the $50 million in upfront fees, so that they don't have to work on a pure contingency basis, because the reward is too great to give the lawyers only a contingent payment. So my guess, if you look at what happened with the Sanofi payout, I think the lawyers got 10 million contingent. I'm just making up the number, something like that, and 14 million upfront. But some of that 14 million went to the trustee, of course. And the whole payout was like 300 million or 400 million or something. So my guess would be is that the lawyers get at most, another 50 million. It's just a huge payout. I can't even imagine why they get that much, which would be 100 million, which would be like, 12, 13 cents a CVR, which in the end of the day is not a huge deal if it's a $5 or $4 or $6, payout, even a $3 payout. Is this a class action? Do class members get notified officially about pro rata contributions, or is this by word of mouth? That's a great question, Pravin. This is not a class action lawsuit, and I think you'd have to find out on your own. So my guess is I'm almost certain the trustee will issue a press release, but they will not send letters to every CVR holder in the mail. I don't believe so. And you are going to be the one that's going to have to chase down the trustee just to get involved. I don't anticipate this being difficult, except for the fact that the guy doesn't respond to my emails. But I have every reason to believe that what he's saying and what the CTFN article says is true, that we will be able to participate pro rata. I'm not stressed about it. You shouldn't be stressed about it. And I promise you I will fight, tooth and nail to make sure it happens. And it will happen. So that's nothing to worry about. Given the morale hit, wouldn't BMY want this resolved sooner? Seems like a fair, huge mistake not extending and modifying the CVR. See, this part's complicated. So I think they do want it. I think they would settle tomorrow for $3. Now, they have said nothing about settling. As far as I understand, they're not even talking to anybody. They're not talking to the trustee, really, and they're not talking to large holders. There's no negotiations going on. Like I said last time, you should expect this to last a long time. But guess what? I don't think there's any negotiations going on, because I don't think CVR holders would take $3 right now. And I think we owe more than $3. So that's the reason why you can't settle. As far as why they didn't do an exchange offer, I think that opens a huge can of worms too. I mean, look, in hindsight, you, me, and everybody on this, YouTube would have liked a $5 exchange offer, extending both the dates for 3 months for IDOCEL and LISOCEL, because right now this thing would be trading at $3 or $3.50, and we'd have a much more money in our accounts. But it almost seems unfair. I mean, I don't think this was our fault at all. And if there's anyone to blame, it's Bristol Myers for the major amendment, and followed by COVID. But the CVR holders shouldn't be the ones that take the blame for not getting the $9. and Celging's lawyers, obviously, for doing a very bad job negotiating this CVR. So I don't think I would necessarily be happy with the outcome of an exchange offer. And also, the exchange offer, the problem is that unless you get 100% of the people to agree to it, then Bristol-Myers is still left with lawsuits for the people that didn't do the exchange offer. So I didn't fully understand that concept before this, expired. The difference with this process is when the trustee makes a deal with Bristol-Myers, when they settle one day, I talked about this in the past, they're going to go to a judge, and the judge is going to bind the settlement so that every CVR holder has to participate, and there can be no contingent liability. If there was an exchange offer, there's nothing that could have made you participate, and you still would have reserved the right to sue, and you could have said that you deserve $9. So Bristol-Myers would have had the exact same headache they have now, just with a smaller contingent liability. So I don't think there was even an option for them to do an exchange offer. This is another good question, which I don't really answer to, Kevin. How does it work for us if we get a settlement tax-wise? Are we actually making potentially more because we otherwise would have paid short-term capital gain had the CVR not expired? Unfortunately, and I don't know this at all, but I'm thinking that all of our settlement will be ordinary income, short-term capital gains. I don't think there's any way it can be long-term capital gains because we all just took our loss on this when it got delisted. So, for me, most of my CVR would have been short-term capital gains anyway, but some of it was long-term capital gains, maybe like 20% of it would have been long-term capital gains. So this is going to be if we have a big settlement, this will be a big hit for me because, everyone knows I had a huge position in this, and paying ordinary income on it will, not be great. I'm planning on looking into that a little bit over the next few months. If there's any way to maybe put this asset, because we all have this asset, which is the potential lawsuit proceeds of CVR. Just because it's not traded, just because it's not in your brokerage account, doesn't mean you don't own this asset. I mean, it's trading at 50 cents, liquid right now. So trust me, it's in your net worth. You just don't see it in your brokerage account. I don't know how I can or how you can do something with an accountant to put the asset in maybe an LLC to where maybe 12 months and a day from now, I'm making all this shit up, by the way. I'm not a lawyer or an accountant, and I'm not even that good of an investor. But maybe something like that could happen to where 12 months in a day, it's a long-term capital gain because it's in its LLC. We have a lot of time to worry about this, but it was something I was going to explore. Will reaching out to the trustee be a similar process to what happened when holders voted to change the trustee? I don't know, Jeff. We're going to have to wire them money or send them a check, right? So it's a little more complicated than just sending an email with a piece of paper that, with a signature on it. How many shares do members of the steering committee own? It's a good question, Andrew. I think combined, all 5 members own 40%. I think two funds own like 75 million, and then it goes to 35 million for the rest. So whatever that is, 30. Yeah, they're probably own like 35%. They own a lot. And if the 50 million ends up being too much, they want to err on the side of caution so they don't have to ask for a capital call from every CVR holder over the next 4 years. We'll get that money back, of course. We'll be refunded whatever excess there is. And if Bristol-Myers, settles in 6 months, then it'll be much less than 50 million, of course. Questions on the CVR? So anyway, this is a real game of prisoner's dilemma in some aspect. I mean, as you get closer and closer to the actual trial, which is many years away, each side has to ask themselves what they think the odds are of success or partial success. And we'll know a lot more. For instance, Bristol-Myers is going to see how New York State courts issue, what verdicts they issue over the next few years on COVID-related contracts. And if it's pretty clear that courts are sympathetic to the participant that got screwed because of COVID, Bristol Myers is not going to want to take the risk in court that they could lose $9 plus interest. So, CVR holders are going to be emboldened, and they're not going to take $3. They're certainly not going to take 50 cents. So the only way I think we get 50 cents or 75 cents one day is if the case is pretty bad, and you get 4 years from now, and New York state law is very clear that there's no way COVID is an excuse. But by the way, it's not just COVID. It's the major amendment and the way they respond to the 483s and all their correspondence with the FDA over the course of the year. So there's many angles here that a judge who's a human being, he can look objectively about intent of CVR, intent of the contract, look outside of the scope of an exact date that's on there. Just like I used with my building analogy. Contract law is fluid. It's not as simple as you missed the deadline. How much does it usually cost to ship a case of Data Goche? $29 anywhere in the country. We are a very sympathetic plaintiff. My theory is judge, jury decides we're just vulture capitalists. I actually think we are a very sympathetic plaintiff. This CVR was issued to mostly, a lot of retail holders in an acquisition, and it's big pharma we're against, not guy. And I'm sure that the plaintiffs will highlight, us. I wouldn't be surprised if the YouTube videos come up in court, if it gets to court, showing how many regular people got harmed by trying to participate in what is really, venture funding, right? I mean, if you want to look at it, I don't look at it as being vulture capitalists. I look at this as being venture capitalists, right? Our money helped fund the M&A for Bristol Myers that helped bring these 3 drugs to market. That's the idea behind the CVR. We took the risk of these 3 drugs getting through. I don't think it at all comes across us being vulture capitalist. I'm not just saying that. I really just don't believe it. Now, am I saying that we're like doing God's work? No, but I don't think Bristol Myers not paying us the money comes across particularly sympathetic. And remember, a ton of the employees have this too, and they're going to be entitled to all of the proceeds. Even if Bristol Myers gives the employees bonuses this year that make up for the lost CVR, they're not going to relinquish their rights in a settlement. The employees still get the money. So I can assure you that the employees are going to be rooting hard for a settlement, and a really good settlement. And the day that happens, you're going to have a lot of happy Bristol Myers employees. And Bristol Myers knows this. So do I think the fact that they're not rushing to settle is a negative? No, I don't. I think that's exactly what you expect them to do. Time's on their side until you get close to a trial. Thanks a lot, Glenn. I appreciate it. But yeah, I feel good. I feel much better about it than I did before. And I thought about it the last few days. If I could buy more at 50 cents, I would probably increase my position, 25 to 50%. Remember, it's at 50 cents right now, mark to market at 50 cents. It's a 10% position for me right now at 50 cents. So I would make it from a 10% to like a 12 to 15% position. Because I think that your chance of any recovery is extraordinarily high. It just might take 4 years for you to get that 50 cents back, if that's what it ends up being. But I think it should be trading at higher than 50 cents. I think it should be trading somewhere between 75 cents and $1 right now. Probably much closer to $1. And definitely at $1 after IDASL gets approved. So yeah, maybe it'll end up working out for us, guys. I mean, look, the opportunity cost not having the money for multiple years is terrible. And the whole thing is, it sucks. But if we get a nice recovery, I'll feel a lot better about it. Okay, well, the last 2 things I want to talk about, and it'll be pretty brief, is Dell and Groupon. They both reported after the close. I am very cautious and interested in seeing what happens with Groupon, because Groupon delayed their earnings by many weeks from when they usually report. So usually they announce earnings 2 weeks before the actual earnings date. And that in the past has been the end of January is when they announce it. And then they report 2 weeks later, call it like February 10th to February 15th. Last year, they were a little bit late. They announced it, I think, February 12th, and they reported February 19th. And then all of a sudden, we just got a PR 2 days ago saying they were going to report earnings today. I don't expect it to be bad news. Usually you delay earnings because maybe it's also the end of the year, right? So you might have accounting issues. Maybe you have a hard time closing your books. I thought maybe there's a chance there was some M&A stuff, but clearly that's not happening. There'll be no positive surprise, I don't believe, tonight as a result of delayed earnings. So I'm a little anxious about why they delayed earnings. I'm not worried about the accounting side at all. So, we'll see what it is. I have such a big position. It's a little nerve-wracking. Groupon's a little bit of an enigma because Q4 and Q1, probably won't be great. That being said, a lot of the country's reopened already and is, surging in reopening. And, guidance for Q1 could be much better than I expect it to be. I've been cautious the whole time about this, knowing that in California we're shut down, but California isn't the whole country. So I don't know what to expect. I do believe that the street is way off on the modeling of this company. They're still modeling the goods wrong, the goods business. They're modeling it at a gross number and not a net number. And that means your headline revenue number will almost certainly miss tonight. I think. Maybe I'm wrong. That doesn't matter, right? None of this matters. It's poor modeling, and it doesn't mean that the value of this business is worth any different because a bunch of sell-siders forgot to figure out the new business model change. Where I'm increasingly optimistic is I truly believe that Q3 and Q4 and maybe even Q2 are going to show gangbuster quarter-over-quarter growth as we get through the rest of this year. And this stock of this company is being totally overlooked as a reopening play when all the other reopening plays have gone up so much. I mean, they're all trading way above their pre-COVID levels. And Groupon is hard to figure out where this pre-COVID level is because it blew up in February when they missed their Q4 of last year. So it went from 60 to 10 over the course of the 6 weeks of mid-February to the end of March. And you could argue it's kind of back to its pre-COVID levels, but it's not back to its pre-earnings blow-up levels. None of this matters, of course. What matters is what the valuation should be. And the math is pretty straightforward. I mean, you're looking at an EV and a market cap right now of whatever, 1.1, 1.2 billion. They're pretty much the same thing. And I mean, I could get to numbers in 2022 that are north of 300 million in EBITDA. And, free cash flow of, north of $200 million. And obviously, if they transition the business model to where this is more of a marketplace, which won't be easy, but if they just show, Groupon has not shown top line growth in years and years. Okay. And because of this COVID reset, they will certainly show top line growth over the next, in the locals. The goods transition screws up that part of the element because obviously goods gross profit might go up, but the top line number won't because you're not getting the gross revenue, you're getting the net revenue. But it doesn't matter. If you look at under the hood at the locals business, which is all that matters, that will show a growth in revenue over the rest of this year and next year. And that's never happened in like 4 or 5 years. So if they can actually start cash flowing well and you have a top line growth story, I mean, this market's loco. I mean, what is that worth? You tell me. I mean, so I don't know what happens tonight. I think it'll be an opportunity if the stock does blow up on whatever reason, why they delayed earnings, a miss on Q4, a bad guide on Q1. Maybe they have. I should bring this up. They have not named this CEO permanent yet, but they did announce he's presenting at Morgan Stanley in a week. So it's very likely that we'll find out that the CEO is made permanent this afternoon. Sometimes when that happens, you kitchen sink, guidance going forward so that, his options and his stock get priced at a better price than, the current market price. Do I think that's going to happen? No, but it's possible, I guess. The board has to agree to that happening. Kitchen sinking is a weird phrase. It means get rid of everything bad when you start a new job. But here, everything bad kind of already happened this last year. So it's not like you can say, oh, we're writing off, this business, or we're doing that, or, we expect 2 more years before we get back to being profitable, or I don't expect any kind of language like that. But I do think it's going to be rather dramatic, whatever happens. The other good news is they're doing a conference call tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Eastern. Again, if something very bad was going to happen this afternoon, they would have done their conference call simultaneously with the earnings, I believe. They wouldn't let the stock trade for a full 30 minutes tomorrow before they start the conference call. So look, I think that implied vol is way too high in the stock. My position is I own stock. I own a lot of April call spreads. I own a lot of January call spreads. And I would use the opportunity if this does blow up to be selling. I'll be selling puts in it in the over the summer, and then in January strikes to go against my call spreads. On to Dell. Dell should have a good quarter. Dell and VMware both report this afternoon. VMware, of course, lost its CEO recently, and that made the stock blow up. VMware and Dell guided to 2021 guidance back in November, so there should be no surprise about 2021 guidance. They've already guided it. I think all signs point to Dell's and VMware's channel checks as being positive in the sell side notes. So I don't expect any surprises out of Dell or VMware. I do think there is a 20% chance we get the spin news this afternoon. We're getting much closer to September, and I thought this was going to happen sooner than it's already happened. So I wouldn't be surprised if we hear about a Dell spin, a VMware spin this afternoon. Who knows though? And I'm not expecting any fireworks with Dell. And I think that's pretty much it on my end. Let's see if I have any questions for you guys. What do you think about GameStop? I am absolutely terrified of the stock market right now. I haven't done anything to hedge my terror, but there's nothing. As I look at the Russell down 2% and the NASDAQ down 2% and the S&P 500 down 1.4% and bonds, going down every single day, and Bitcoin up 4% and GameStop up 40%. And, this is not a healthy stock market. I talked about yesterday on Twitter about how CCIV, how a sign of unhealthiness is that CCIV is doing the exact same thing that Nikola did last summer, which is right now you can buy the CCIV warrant and create CCIV at $25 a share, and it's trading at $29 a share. Now, you can't exercise that warrant today. You have to hold it for 6 months, but you do own an economic interest in CCIV. And if you wanted to own CCIV, I do not, you should own the CCIV warrant, not CCIV common. Yet, we had 46 million shares of CCIV trade today at $30 a share, and we've had 1.65 million shares of the warrant trade at $13 a share. So why is this happening? Well, it's happening because retail can't buy the warrant, and they don't know about the warrant. So they just buy the common, and it can't be arbed efficiently by institutional investors because the CCIV rebate is either too high, or there's a risk that they get bought in between now and September, whenever you can exercise this warrant. And then it's also complicated because if CCIV runs to 100 on the short squeeze, the warrant won't follow it because day traders and retail aren't buying up the warrant and not allowing the parity to happen to what the intrinsic value is of the warrant. So the ARB is hard to put on. So that's the reason why it's trading so much below intrinsic. This kind of thing does not happen in a healthy market. Okay, it's telling you that the forward price of CCIV by institutional investors should be $25 right now, because you can create it at $25 right now versus the $29 it's trading at. And that scares me. It's the same thing that, again, that NKLA did last summer. And, what am I doing about it? I unfortunately have not done much about it. I'm pretty exposed. I have a pretty long portfolio, but the things that I own, I think are pretty special sit, and yeah, special sits go down too in a bad stock market, but they usually don't get the uplift that the rest of the stock market's gotten. So, today Groupon's down 60 basis points. Sometimes it's down 8% when the market goes down. I don't know. I think everybody, if I was going to give advice, it would be to strap, your seatbelt on, because this is not a, I've been doing this since, 1993. And, I've seen a lot of different kind of markets, and this one probably takes the cake. I mean, at least in the dot-com bubble, you could have a story behind things, the story behind, business to business and whatever, all the crap stories that came up with why something had a total addressable market of 20 billion or 20 trillion, whatever. I mean, for AMC, for GameStop to, to go to the moon against all rational valuation metrics that could happen years from now, should scare anybody, because then it just basically makes it a video game. And if a stock can be completely disconnected from all reality, which is its future cash flows, then it doesn't mean you can't invest, because you could keep buying, stocks that have great cash flows. But I would be very cautious in fading it and trying to bet against it, because, as we see, I'm under the impression that the GameStop phenomenon was over, and I'm sure many other people were too. And I'm sure a lot of people shorted GameStop in the last 2 weeks. And now look, it's gone up threefold. So, I'm just staying clear of all this stuff. Any other questions? All right. Well, any other news? I'll do another YouTube. Take care, everybody. Stay safe out there. It's a crazy, crazy stock market. Bye.